I am the only one that knows where Todd Fuhrman is joining us from.
Let me guess. Can I guess?
Yeah,
you want to guess first?
Where do you think Todd Fuhrman is, Lance?
I will say he is upstate Massachusetts.
Upstate Massachusetts, okay.
I personally believe that Todd Fuhrman, he's too classy to go to Reno, which is poor man's Vegas. I say he's in South Bend, Indiana.
How did you know that?
You know, Dunaway, you are close, but not quite there. I am 2 hours west of South Bend. Touchdown in Chicago on the lovely Red Eye, and we will be making the pilgrimage to the Notre Dame game in just a little bit as we await the arrival of one final member of our travel party.
Why did you know he was in South Bend? That is the most random place for Fuhrman to be.
Fuhrman, what I think Brown is amazed about is that you and I are friends off air. That we've developed a nice friendship. We exchange text and conversations year round. It's amazing that you think that.
So is that how you knew that?
Yeah, we talked about how big of a game this was that he wanted to go to.
All right, Fuhrman and Dunaway text. That's nice to know. Fuhrman, how are you in O'Hare, baby? Everything good?
I am good, boys. I actually decided, you know what, because one of our buddies' flights was delayed, that we would take a short trip to one of the local casinos here, walk around, sit in the book for a little while. But let me tell you, gentlemen, 22 degrees, a hell of a lot colder than what you think it's going to be, even for someone that grew up in this wintry mix. I'm not sure I'm cut out to be sitting outside for tonight's game and then follow it up tomorrow with game time temperatures expected to be even lower between the Buckeyes and Volunteers.
Are you going to that one too?
Yep, we are going to trek from South Bend, a lovely Fort Wayne, for an overnight pit stop. We'll head to Columbus for the game tomorrow night, and then maybe even look to try and hit the trifecta, depending on how big a sense of urgency we feel for maybe some Browns-Bengals on Sunday when we spend the day in Cincinnati.
You're going to be frozen by the end of this.
So, Fuhrman, not that it matters, but like I have adopted Indiana in this playoff. I don't know if they win tonight. I'm staying away from the side. I do like the total on this game. To me, it's a tough side. I know Indiana really has struggled with elite defenses in both Michigan and Ohio State. Notre Dame's got one of those elite defenses, but I think their defense can limit what Notre Dame does. Where are you on this game? Do you like a side and or a total?
I did like a side a little bit earlier when you had an opportunity to grab the Hoosiers at 7.5 or better. The problem is now when you're looking at a number of 7 and even 6.5 painted across the board, it's a little bit tougher to make a case for the underdog. What I think is fascinating about this matchup is that we have all sorts of questions about Indiana and their strength of schedule. We can use the second half against Michigan or the full 60 minutes against Ohio State as a litmus test to try and prove that. But you dig into what Notre Dame has played since they were able to right the ship after the early season loss to NIU. And their resume has plenty of holes in it as well. I think the big question in this matchup will be how Indiana elects to defend Notre Dame. Do they play 8 in the box and go, we're going to go down? It's going to be because Riley Leonard is beating us with his arm more so than his legs. I do think Indiana does have a path to success offensively, though, with a veteran quarterback and some underrated playmakers. Would not be shocked at all if the Hoosiers are hanging around with a chance to win this outright. Unless you can grab 7.5 and the number comes back, would be hard-pressed to tell anybody to grab 7 or shorter.
Hey, Riley Leonard's been beat up a little bit. Rourke's questionable on whether he's 100% or not. How close to 100 is Rourke, and where's Riley Leonard's health? Any big injuries we should know about in this one?
You know, that's the big question. I mean, some buzz about Riley Leonard and if he'll be close to 100%. I expect Curtis Rourke to be what we've seen from him. We know he's lost mobility, but that was nothing new coming into the year on that surgically repaired knee. I think the hand injury with plenty of time to heal. The other injury we're going to want to keep tabs on will be, of course, Notre Dame's running back Jeremiah Love. He left the game against USC in the regular season finale. Earlier in practice this week, he was seen with a big, bulky knee brace. And if you're not used to playing with that kind of thing, especially in cold weather, being able to cut on a dime and have that straight line speed, I think that'll be the interesting injury to follow if it's a little bit more Jadarian Price than Notre Dame would like.
Todd Fuhrman, bettheboardpodcast.com, bettheboardpodcast.com. He's on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. Penn State tomorrow is playing host to SMU. That game is at 8.5 right now. This is one of those spots where James Franklin is normally bad, Fuhrman. Why might that be different this time?
Yeah, a little bit different, though, when the team on the opposing sidelines isn't wearing scarlet, gray, or maize and blue with a pony logo instead. So you have to take some of that with a grain of salt, but you're exactly right. I mean, we've seen big game James fall all over himself when Penn State had previous expectations, and we wonder if this will be one where they can break tendency. What's interesting about this dynamic, you look at the average temperature for SMU games this season, balmy 72 degrees. Game time temperature is going to be about 50 degrees lighter in that particular department. For Penn State, we saw their offense look significantly healthier, even in defeat against Oregon in the Big Ten Championship. Katron Allen and Nicholas Singleton look to be the dynamic 1-2 combination. But what's interesting about SMU, when you dig into some of their underlying numbers, this is a team that's been very good against the run, a little bit vulnerable against the pass. Penn State doesn't have the kind of perimeter weapons that could put SMU in conflict. This number, the definition of no man's land, just south of 10, north of 7, and we haven't seen a whole lot in the way of movement. I actually think if the weather forecast clears up a bit and we're not dealing with wind, this game has the potential to get a little bit loose and could see making a case to go over the total, especially if the number ticked down a touch.
We've talked about this week, that last team of 68, and the last couple of teams at large that get in, sometimes they make noise. SMU was that last team in this field. Do you get a feeling they're playing with house money? They're loose. I know the conditions could be bad, but if Kevin Jennings doesn't turn the football over, could we have a live dog situation? And that would obviously be bad for James Franklin.
There's no doubt that SMU has absolutely nothing to lose, and I think it's a far cry, a full 180 from what we saw in the ACC title game, where I know the players and coaching staff won't admit it, but anyone who watched that first half against Clemson, SMU looked like they were playing tight, afraid to make the big mistake. They somehow were able to get their legs under them and turn, a 17-point deficit heading into the fourth quarter into a narrow field goal loss, and it couldn't have come, much sooner for SMU, because if they lose that game by 17 to 21 points, I think they find themselves on the outside of this playoff picture looking in. So a little bit of a Cinderella story, relatively speaking, as they make the transition, from a G5 into one of the Power 4 leagues. And to your point, Kevin Jennings becomes the X factor. I would like SMU a little bit more if they were healthier at the receiver position, but I think this is the kind of game against a Big Ten caliber defense where you're going to really feel the absence of R.J. Maryland, the underrated tight end that was kind of a security blanket. If SMU can't get the ground game going, I do worry about the offensive line stepping up in class against Abdul Carter and that Penn State defensive front.
Can I consider Clemson a Cinderella in this thing?
I think you have to, knowing that they had a win and get in. It's not quite like a team from the MEAC, coming in, winning their play-in game as a 16 seed and finding a way to upset the number 1 overall seed. But this is a Clemson side that has the pedigree but hasn't performed to that level this year. Cade Klubnik, a homecoming of sorts, already has 1 win in his career over Quinn Ewers when they were playing for a high school state championship back in January of a COVID year. And you do wonder for Clemson, though, defensively, if they can force Texas to settle for field goals instead of scoring touchdowns. If the Longhorns' offense bogs down like it's done so many times in the red zone, that'll keep Clemson hanging around. My big concern for the Tigers here is that they won't be able to run the football. And Phil Moffitt, dealing with a shoulder injury, has looked like a shell of himself. They lose a running back in the ACC championship to a torn-up knee. And if Cade Klubnik is forced to do everything, both as a runner and a passer, this Longhorns team has questions that need to be answered, but one of which isn't about a stop unit that's one of the nation's best.
All right, leg 2 of Fuhrman's tour tomorrow. We'll take him to the Horseshoe as Tennessee takes on Ohio State. So much around this game. I feel like Fuhrman, Tennessee is 7.5-point underdog right now at mybookie.ag. I feel like, though, they seem to be like the sexiest upset pick. As you chuckle, is that the same thing you've seen?
Yes, it is no doubt the sentiment there that Tennessee has become the in vogue underdog, and you can understand why the public is rallying around this Vols team, having seen what they did in the regular season finale against a pesky Vanderbilt team. Spotted the Commodores a 2-score lead early and was able to rally and play on their front foot. On the flip side of things, the last data point we have for Ohio State is them not just failing to cover against Michigan, but losing outright as nearly a 3-touchdown favorite. All the Boo Birds out in full force, trying to call for Ryan Day's job. Give Chip Kelly a ton of credit. He took responsibility and ownership for a lackluster offensive game plan. And I think the big question for Ohio State that we'll see early on in this game, if they can protect Will Howard, this will be one of the most talented receiving corps the Tennessee secondary has had to face. And Howard has done extremely well against man coverage that he's going to see a ton of against Tennessee. On the flip side of things, I do worry about Tennessee and their ability to get going offensively. I look for Ohio State to play 8 men in the box, try and do what they can to neutralize Dylan Sampson. And given how banged up Tennessee is at the receiver position, I think that's a storyline that's not getting enough buzz, showing that a couple of their top options were in red non-contact jerseys as recently, I should say, as Tuesday and Wednesday this week. They also lost 4 of their 10 scholarship wide receivers to the portal that won't be available. So if Nico struggles at all, this Ohio State team gets off to a quick start. I think it can get ugly for Tennessee. My numbers make it right around that 7.5 threshold. Better angle for me is attacking Tennessee's offense against the Buckeyes defense. I think Tennessee fails to get to 20 points. I like their team total under 19.5.
Wow.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the total overall. I mean, it's a low total at 46. I like the under, but, man, you get a short field here and there. You get something on special teams, it becomes a problem. Are you leaning under overall on this game?
You were exactly right, LT, and that's part of the reason that I wanted to try and isolate one side of the ball against another, because a 46 with multiple weeks to prepare for an Ohio State team that has said they want to be more aggressive in terms of throwing the football leaves me a little bit nervous. And as someone who has bet Ohio State unders in the past, some of these marquee games, it just doesn't give you a ton of wiggle room, and it's hard for me to even forget having under 52.5 for the Indiana-Ohio State game, where you didn't see much in the way of offense, but it was those short fields and special teams that created a little bit of a problem. So I can't quite get there with the total down at 46, and I do think if the number ticked down a shade more in that 45.5, 45 range, you would see some value seekers looking to actually bet it over.
I really believe Auburn basketball is the best team in the country right now. Tennessee in some polls, but in the Ken Pom and the net, it's Auburn. Even if they play without Janai Broome tomorrow against Purdue, we on the show think they win this basketball game. How do you feel about this showdown in Birmingham tomorrow afternoon?
You know, you'd love to see Auburn having this as a true home game, but this still will feel like a little bit of a home atmosphere. So it's always interesting in terms of the adjustments you make for home court. Given the proximity to campus, even if it's not in their normal gym. But in terms of not having one of your marquee players, not just on the Auburn roster, but in the entire sport, going to have a massive impact on this number. But this Auburn team, to your point, feels like a team cut from a different cloth right now. And while Purdue has had uneven performances thus far, it feels to me like Auburn wants to go out there and continue to make statements. They did it once last weekend against the Big Ten opponent. I think Purdue will provide a little bit more stiffer resistance than what they saw against Ohio State, but I'm not running to step in front of Auburn anytime soon just yet.
Hey, have you watched much of that Eagle Staff kid at North Dakota? A lot of our state was introduced to him the other night. That kid, I mean, he has got zero conscience shooting the ball.
I have not, but I'm still trying to figure out, and I give Coach Oates a world of credit. I don't know how easy it is to get from Tuscaloosa to Grand Forks. I mean, that's college hockey country. That's not exactly where college basketball programs from the SEC are supposed to go for true road games.
Yeah, I don't think you'll see him do it again. Trust me.
I don't either.
Hey, trust me. There's a reason that a lot of these mid-majors love to get the big boys coming into their small barns. They get everybody showing out. And look, I'll say one thing. I mean, Fargo is a hell of a lot nicer place to go than Grand Forks. You spend a day in December in Grand Forks, it's going to make you rethink a lot of your life choices when it comes to some of that wintry weather.
Fuhrman, we've got the NFL up against college football playoffs tomorrow. Typically doesn't go good for college, but it is the postseason, so we'll see what happens there. But interesting game early on in Arrowhead. Said this earlier this week. If you're going to jump on Kansas City, go ahead and take them plus the 3 points, because it's not going to go up. The only thing it would do is flip back around if Mahomes plays. Now it's gone from Houston, and some shops was -3 to open. It's gone all the way out to Kansas City -3.5 now that Mahomes will play. How big of a nightmare could this be for some shops out there if this thing hits in between?
Oh, I'm sure there are plenty of books that will be doing everything they can and then some, praying that this game doesn't fall Kansas City by 1 or 2. Because to your point, LT, you had professional bettors taking the asymmetric risk approach, going, you know what? If Patrick Mahomes is officially ruled out, that number wasn't going to climb much further than the Texans -3. Maybe it leaked out to -3.5. But the only side to make a case for early was backing the underdog in Kansas City plus the 3, figuring out what to do with that ticket later, given the fact that we've seen Mahomes play through similar injuries in the past. And when this number did touch forward some prominent shops, immediately you saw Houston Texans money come in. This Chiefs team, I know we've talked about at great lengths, has been one of the more overvalued commodities in the NFL. They did finally break that long ATS losing streak last weekend, but needed 6 turnovers against the Cleveland Browns to make that happen. For me, I was actually hoping this total climbed a little bit higher. Want to go under. I'm going to wait this thing out patiently, but don't really have strong conviction when it comes to the side. Worry a little bit about Houston's ability to get things going in the passing attack, knowing how tough it's been to run on this Chiefs defensive front.
Maggie, my wife, texted me during the interview and said, tell Nicole that we tried her banana nut bread recipe yesterday, and it was delicious. It was fantastic.
You two kids.
Thank Nicole for sending that to her. We appreciate it.
Hey, you know what? I mean, look, you guys go back and forth. I mean, Dunaway, for all I know, You have more interaction with my wife than I do during football. So I get my hat to you in that regard.
That's pretty typical, to be honest.
Fuhrman, first of all, we will not talk with you next week, so have a very Merry Christmas. Also, safe travels and enjoy these games, man. What a treat you guys are having for 2 college football games. That ought to be fun.
You know what, guys? I'm hoping that I don't learn from my mistake tonight, that I'll have to find some outdoor or sporting goods store to try and pick up a couple of extra layers. And we will see how fast my Midwestern blood is thinned out after spending 20 years in the desert. But no doubt looking forward to it. It's definitely a unique experience to be part of the college football playoff with on-campus venues and 2 of the more iconic stadiums as it pertains to Midwestern blue blood football. So looking forward to it, and you guys do the same. Enjoy the Christmas holiday, and best of luck at the wagering window with those pro and college pursuits.
Yep. See you, Fuhrman. Take care, buddy.
Merry Christmas, man.
Yep.
See you, bud.